No man do they call me, my mother and my father, and all my comrades as well. Hey everybody, so I decided to start digging myself out of my rut. Been kind of bummed out since I got the news that my channel was demonetized, so at this point I am just soldiering forward and putting something out because I had an idea. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was uh, why people in the 40k setting might act in an irrational manner from our perspective. I think it's fairly safe to say that in a lot of memes and kind of jokey around about the 40k setting, there's a lot of stupid things that are done by uh, people in the Imperium. And it's like, well, why would anyone behave like this? Why would you um, try to hoard wealth while the well-being of your planet is in danger because aliens or heretics or demons are invading? Why would you uh, behave in such an extremely short-sighted manner when the consequences are catastrophic for everyone? Um, So I wanted to take a look at this from a psychological perspective because there are a lot of examples in history of leaders or countries or nations or different people behaving in irrational ways that are ultimately self-destructive. Corruption persists. Petty politics persists despite uh, your empire or your nation falling apart around you. Um, so rather than say, everything in the far flung future of the Warhammer 40k setting is everyone's just really stupid, um, let's assume that this is an accurate way that people behave, because there are examples of people behaving in an extremely selfish, self destructive way. Um, Essentially, when you take a look at the Warhammer 40k setting, everyone is always under an incredible amount of stress because there's a lot of external pressure. You have invading alien armies, you have demons, as I've mentioned before, you've had heretics, you have uprisings, you have all of the problems that go into dealing with a large group of people, you have petty political squabbles, you have this group, you have that group, you have this guild, you have that association, you have that group tied in with the administratum. You have to balance all these different things, and when you are pressured all the time, when your body's in a state, when your mind and body is in a state of stress all the time, and you're always trying to survive, when you are constantly worried about who's going to end your life, through assassination, or if you're like a high ranking person, or if you're some schlub and you're worried about a ganger killing you for your ration biscuit, uh, that amount of stress hampers your ability to think rationally because you don't have time. You don't have time to stop and think about what the rational thing to do is. You are so trained to always be in a life or death situation. You cannot think beyond, what do I need to do to keep living? What do I need to do to protect what I have? What do I need to do to protect my loved ones? What do I need? Like, you don't have a chance to look at the big picture because you are essentially dealing with horrors beyond horror all the time. That threat's hanging over your head all the time. So because you need to assess and address threats quickly, you can't take the time that you need to address threats as they actually are. So that's why you have uh, inquisitors killing tons of civilians because they're afraid that a cult's going to bring about some terrible demonic catastrophe, even though that's not actually what's going on. They don't have time. They don't have time to consider that this is just killing a bunch of innocent people who believe something kind of funny that isn't related to the Chaos Gods. When all sorts of cruel, heartless decisions are made that like don't make any sense, that just create problems, it's because, or it can be explained by, people are not always able to be rational if they're constantly under stress and strain. You just can't. There's a point when men are experiencing war that they can't keep going on. Your body, your mind, everything just kind of gives out eventually. You can't rally yourself in a heroic charge when you're cold, you haven't had anything to eat, you're jumping at shadows because you're dealing with invisible stealthed enemies that can pop out anywhere. You know, all these different things. You just can't function. And that's, for me, that kind of explains away a lot of the terrible decisions that people in the 40k setting make, because they're not thinking rationally. I think probably one of the biggest examples of like, why did anyone do this ever, is Governor Straub of Armageddon, who is like the most incompetent person ever and is involved in petty politics and ends up siding with the orcs and is kind of returns as a puppet. Like, he does all sorts of terrible, terrible things in the Armageddon setting. It's like, well, why did he do any of this? And it's like, well, because he had to maintain power by whatever means he could, and the way he learned to maintain power is how he continued to rule and maintain power, even though he had to deal with an orc invasion. He wasn't able to like adjust. Now, I'm not excusing anyone who behaves abominably in a crisis. This is more of an explanation of like why people act extremely selfishly and short-sighted despite an immediate crisis that threatens their own life and the lives of everyone else around them. Consider it like, imagine that you're dealing with an army, let's say a medieval or ancient army, and they're facing a charge from the enemy. And the enemy attacks, and they're really ferocious, and you're trying to fight next by your buddies, and you haven't been able to eat, everything's kind of scary, and you guys break and are routed. Now, logically, you should not break and rout, no matter what. You have to stand and fight, because if you rout, the enemy's just going to kill you. But you can't think like that when you're in the moment of life and death. Like, you could die right now. And when your morale wavers, rationality doesn't take hold. Your panic and your fear and your desire to live and your base instincts take over. And I think that's a lot of why the stupidest things happen in the 40k setting, from a psychological point of view. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed my ramble. I want to definitely get back to making more content, and this was something that crawled into my brain, and I thought about it, so let's just do it. I did this kind of off the cuff, no script. If you enjoyed this, definitely like and subscribe, and let's try to get this channel up and going and back into creating content on a regular basis, so that way when I'm able to remonetize come April, I will, still have an audience. All right. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed this. No Man out.